Thanks for stopping by at the Life of a Career podcast. We're exploring the life of people and their careers. Even though we are in the digital age, access to careers and career advice from professionals is still very much gated by wealth, status, pedigree, and personal resources. At Mentor Access, we are bringing life to careers and jobs by proliferating access to professionals and mentors for those who may not have personal connections to different industries. Our mission is to open up access to professional stories that might one day inspire children, students, and other job seekers who might otherwise settle for a career path because they weren't privileged enough to know about other opportunities. In today's episode, we are speaking with Lauren Taylor. She is a social media project strategist. Thanks again for joining us at the Life of a Career podcast hosted by Mentor Access. Now let's meet Lauren. All right. Thanks, Lauren, for joining us at the Life of a Career podcast. Before we get started, can you just give a quick 90 seconds of who you are and what you do?
Hi, Eric. Thank you for having me on. My name is Lauren Taylor. I work with social media. I'm a project strategist, and I would say I'm adjacent to a project manager because I handle content creation, scheduling, strategy, and research. So I kind of am a jack of all trades. So I find it very fulfilling to help clients and also look back on the data to see the improvement over time. Um, yeah, no, I'm one-on-one with clients a lot. I love researching. That's a big one.
Okay.
Um, mhm. I'm not exactly sure how to exactly describe what I do because I do so much. But all in all, I work remotely. I work within a small team. I yeah, I work in a startup as well. So I'm really finding myself at the beginning of a lot of different things going on, but I love to be able to grow with every single project that's handed to me.
Okay. Yeah. And before we get into the day to day of sort of breaking down what that's like to work on lots of projects from the beginning and then all of those different aspects of the project, we like to start at the beginning. Is this what you always wanted to do as a kid? Is this what you dreamed about, being a social media strategist?
Well, I would have to say the first thing I wanted to be was actually a princess. So that has not gone accordingly, but I think it all works out for the best. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a bunch of different things. The first thing I wanted to do was be a teacher because I loved all the teachers that I went to school with. That eventually grew into being a movie director because I'm obsessed with the movies and I like being behind stage with a lot of stuff. That's also when I was like getting into theater for the first time. And then in high school, I graduated to wanting to do something more hands on, like trade skill related. And I wanted to do culinary. Like I did a program with my school called what was it called? Either way. But it was a culinary program where I got to miss half the school day to do culinary things. And then after going through that program, I knew I did not want to be in that environment. And so by the time I was graduating high school, I knew I was not ready to go to a 4 year university. And I also lived down the street from a very credited, like, what is it, a junior college where I got my associates in arts. Like, I knew I got that done. I still didn't know what I wanted to do in my career or continue in my higher education. So I studied abroad for 3 months to England. Still didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew where I wanted to go to university. And then by the time I was in university, I thought I was going to be an English major because I always loved to write. And instead, what that turned out to be is that I found a passion in sociology and I minored in journalism because I knew that would be the fallback plan. And so by the time I graduated college, I thought I was going to be working in focus groups, helping out, big companies potentially, whether that's like business related, like business relations within the business, or potentially like reviews and, feedback from clients or guests who use a certain product. And I searched for a job in that for almost a year and nothing came about it. And same with even journalism. I was trying to freelance smaller stories to magazines, newsletters, whatever it might be, and nothing was happening. And so finally, I was just kind of complaining about the situation to my friend Nick, who I used to bartend with, and he networked me into the current position I'm in, which is social media. And part of the credentials, I didn't have any credentials really, but leading into that job, it was just the fact that the only thing that helped me was that I did I was like the social media person for a historical society I was in during college. And so I was brought on. I was like a temp for 3 months before they were like, yeah, no, you're not crazy. So we would love to have you on. I'm like, run it. And so I've been with the company for about 3 years. And even though I didn't find myself wanting, I didn't imagine myself being a social media person or an employee that revolved around social media, but I found it extremely rewarding because it impacts both professionally and personally. Like I always knew I wanted something creative to do, and this is a perfect outlet for it because I get to be creative in all different sorts of industries. So it's like there's one that's a dance company, there's one that's construction, and then there's another that's food. So it's like I get to kind of fire off these creative ideas to clients, and most of the time it works, or like they're like, yeah, run it. And I get this, responsibility to run with it as much as I can. And that gives me a lot of satisfaction because to see results on a creative idea that was just originally just thought out of the blue, if it's really rewarding to see that. And I've really grown to like my position, even though I never saw myself in it.
Yeah, when you talked a little bit about when you were in high school, you went through the culinary program, and then you mentioned one thing that you did in college, which was the social media for, I think, a
Mm-hmm.
historical society. Were
Mm-hmm.
there any other jobs that you did in high school or in college?
Well, it's not that interesting, but I think it shows loyalty on my part, even from a young age, which is I worked in a dine-in theater, two different dine-in theaters over the course of 5 years while it was like the end of high school and all throughout college. So I got to be in this like serving industry where you got to see something new every day. And I knew by the time I was done with college that I did not want to stay in it. And I know people who work downtown Chicago at like, Michelin restaurants who can make upwards up to 6 figures a year serving, but they have that, I believe, like, what is it? Extroverted personality. Whereas like leading out of college and like, I love being at the bar, but I prefer to be in the back making drinks for folks in the theater, not for people who are walking up. And it's like I think that's when I started to develop more of an introverted relation, like an introverted personality. Like I didn't have to keep pressuring myself to be extroverted, and that was the whole thing. It was like I enjoyed working with the people that I bartended with. I did not like the job, and I think that's a case for a lot of people. But I can say to this day that I'm like, I really do miss that job because it was another source of being creative. Like if even though I wasn't good at chemistry, like I almost failed that in high school. It allowed me to be creative and it made me feel, scientific because if we got the opportunity to make a new drink, sometimes we were chosen. So it was, I think you're based on the personality that I have, I always take the silver linings from every single aspect. But yeah, I learned a lot in that dining experience and some good, some not so good. Examples of what not to be.
Yeah, can you give us some examples of lessons that you learned in that environment?
Lessons that I learned. Let's see. Well, one, it's like always be polite to folks that like even if someone's not being nice to you, give them the courtesy that they may not have given you because you never know what someone's going through. And it's that's the whole thing. I'm like, even if someone is not giving you that kind energy, put it forward because it will come back. Because I've had people come up to me and say like, that is not a nice guest, and I'm like, it's like, but they were the nicest with you. So I'm like, okay, I'll take it, whatever. But also, I think because I have ADHD, I have a tendency to ramble, and so I think something I kind of learned was, and it's not from the job, from serving or anything, but from Hamilton, which is like talk less. It's like smile more. I mean, that was really relevant for being at the bar. For being at the bar, because sometimes if you smile more, you get an extra tip. But that's not the best advice. And I don't know if that's it. It's mixed. But other advice I think I would get is just like when it came to like to building relationships with everyone in that theater, everyone came from different points of view. And so I think it was really helpful that like to initiate conversation. Like that was one of the things I definitely learned is just initiate saying hi or getting to know people's names, and you're going to see that kind of respect returned. Like even when it came to certain servers, like they knew they could come up to me to get change from my drawer, even though there were certain people who didn't allow that. Like there were other bartenders who didn't allow that. And then in return, those servers who would come up for me for change, they busted their ass to sell alcohol to make their own change, and they would always come back and help me out too. So it's like, so I guess the best advice I got is that it's a little bit of survival of the nicest, not survival of the fittest, because being nice can really take you a long way.
Mm, that's really good insight from working at a job that I think some people will look at it as like a dead end, but I always talk about how, you know, regardless of where you are in life, there's lessons to be learned and could be carried forward as long as you keep that positive attitude of like, hey, you know, this is just a stepping stone and there's something to be had here. And I think that, you know, you just described is exactly an important aspect of something to learn.
And also too is I kind of want to go back to that like idea of like people could see, like I worked at an AMC, right? And it's like some people could see that as a dead end job, but I also saw people rise up really quickly. Like AMC is a really good it's a really good corporation for hiring and promoting within their own company. So I've seen people go from like server to a general manager. In fact, I saw a new manager come in from Germany, just happened to come in, and he totally reworked like the structure of like how people were doing like spreadsheets or documents or anything, and they moved him up to corporate like within 3 months of us having him. Like he was fantastic, David. And what was I gonna say? There was something about not survival of the nicest. There was something else I was going to say about working at AMC, because there are a lot of takeaways, but it would be more of like survival on like how to go day to day. Like you have to have the best shoes, like invest them in some really nice shoes to stand and work on. Um, but I was going to say one more thing, but maybe it'll come back up. Sorry about that.
Is it potentially like how you work inside of an organization and then how you navigate that structure?
A little bit, because it falls into the survival of the nicest, because it's like I saw people who would come for our managers, and it's like they're people too. Like, you know what I mean? It's like they have to follow policy, so do we. And it's like I realized like as soon as there's like a human connection, like as soon as you start talking to people about their family, pets, like any of their kids potentially, it's like there is another human factor that like corporations will not see. And so again, it kind of comes back to just having open communication and like not being afraid to speak your mind, because I got a raise. So back when I first started at AMC, I was making 825, right? And then this was after I studied abroad, and so I had a lot more time, and I noticed that there were certain people who had been with the company for about 6 months and who should have been trained on certain things, and they weren't. And so I went up to one of our managers and I was like, "Hey, I would just like to initiate a new training facility, like a new training system where everyone has to come through me, because it is ridiculous, in my opinion, that this person has been here this long and they still don't know how to do this part." So, I simply just said that. I was like, I just want to train people. That's it. And then they returned with, "Oh, we're giving you a new position, which is like a lead, and we're raising your budget or like your hourly to $10 an hour." I was like, "What?" And I was like, I wasn't asking for that, but I will gladly take it. And it all led up to like also having nice reviews from other employees and also my managers. It was showing up and being dependable. It was staying around and making sure that the job was done and that I was proud of that job that I had done. And I'm not sure if you can see, sorry, but my dog just joined the call.
Yeah.
So there's that. Also, I'm going to just really quickly turn this off so I can go close my door. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I think you finished your thought there.
I
So,
did, right?
okay.
Because I'm like, I learned a lot with AMC, but this was actually what I was thinking about with AMC, is that when when people kind of envision like a serving job and everything, some people might see it as a dead end job. But something that I really learned, and this is just like a takeaway, it's not really advice, but like just because you don't have a degree doesn't mean you're not smart. Like I have met so many smart people, like whether that's street smart, book smart, whatever it is, but like so many smart people are like you're always surrounded by people who know more than you on something. And like that was like my biggest eye opener was that like people would just come in being like, have you heard about this? Have you heard about this? Have you even tried this? And I was like, no, but thank you for letting me know so I can add it to my wish list. So it was always an eye opening experience, but just so much bullshit in the way too. Like a lot of positive takeaways come from the team, a lot of negatives come from like just people having a bad day and just wanting to complain about something, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
Yeah.
so takeaway is that there's smart people all around you. That was my favorite part of the job.
Okay. So you worked at AMC while you were in school, and
Mm-hmm.
then um, you went to study abroad. What made you make that decision to study abroad?
Well, it kind of goes back to high school where it was like I knew I didn't want to go to a 4-year university when I graduated high school. So I was like, okay, what can I get done at community college? And I was like, oh, I can get my associates in arts. And they gave you a spreadsheet that was like, these are how you get the degree. I'm like, cool. I knocked that shit out in about a year and a half. And I was like, okay, well, it's the middle of the semester or it's the middle of the year, right? I finished in December. So now I'm looking at what was then 2016, which kind of seems crazy to think about. And I was like, I can either transfer to a university right away or I can try to travel. Except I didn't have any real money saved up at that point. And so I went to I was just walking around COD. That's the community college I went to, right? College of DuPage. And I saw that they were having study abroad flyers and like it was short term stuff. And I was like, oh, this is perfect. I'm going to go look into this. I'm just going to go talk to someone. I go up there and there was this very energetic woman being like, hi, what can I help you with today? I'm like, oh, yeah, I want to know more about this Iceland trip. And she was like, actually, you qualify for our England program. And I was like, tell me more. And she was like, it's 3 months, it's like X amount of dollars, but you at this rate, we don't have anyone going. So you could apply for certain scholarships, get the money refunded back to you, and you can still go. I'm like, even though I'm almost done with my degree, it's okay. She was like, yeah, it'll transfer to wherever you go next. I'm like, cool. So I thought like that happened in one day. I thought, wouldn't this be fun to tell my parents? Like, I would just want to see what their reaction is, naturally as a younger sibling. And then I tell my parents about it, and then plot twist, they called my bluff and they said, you are doing it and we will help you because, it was like X amount and I was like missing a certain number of funds and they're like, we got you. So within a week, spontaneously decided that I was going to study abroad for 3 months. Turned out to be one of the best decisions of my life. But even at that time, I didn't know what I was going for. I was kind of just going because I hate to fly and I knew I wanted to go to Europe and I wanted to extend that as long as possible. And then it turned out like, oh, you can be proactive about it with your own like college credits. I was like, cool, let's do it. And then when I got there, found out that England college, the one that I went to at least, didn't assign a whole bunch of homework. So then I was just kind of like hanging around. So I really got to fulfill that moment in my life where I was like, I didn't know where I wanted to go. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I found something and it made me extremely happy. And then while I was out there in England, it was a small world connection, but I was pretty much just talking about whether or not to go to Loyola or DePaul at that time. And I had a friend who I met while out there. They had a sibling who was going to DePaul and they had nothing but nice things to say. I'm like, you know what? Sounds great. I knew I wanted to be close to home because my family's in the Chicago suburbs. I was like, cool, I'm just going to apply while I'm out here. And so that's exactly what I did. So I was in England from January to March trying to figure out what I'm doing. And by the time I got back, I knew I was going to be going back to AMC to bartend. And yeah, I ended up I rode out the rest of that spring and summer, transferred to DePaul, and then I would come back every summer. And honestly, it's like I saw a lot of same faces, which was always reassuring because even in a high corporation like that, there are like quick turnovers. But for those who do stick around, it's like it's so refreshing to see them because there's so much history, and you get to see these different phases of life. Like, right, I was at AMC for 5 years. I have different friend groups from different, you know, different things happening at different points, and like some periods were more drama. There was more drama for certain periods than other, but by the time I got back, it was like a really stable situation, and it was always so dependable. Like, a manager was like waiting for me to email her back when I was in England. She was like, "Yep, come back." I was like, "Cool, happy to be back." Except for the people. Like, I'm happy to see all the people. I'm not necessarily that great. I'm not that happy to see all the guests that come back, but you know, there are good regulars and then there are bad regulars. But that's life, isn't it?
Yeah.
I
So
don't know, right? That's the reality of the situation.
yeah, and then so did you go from AMC? So once you came back, you finished your schooling in DePaul, right? And
Mhm.
then and then from there it was still back to the AMC career, job, and then finally someone you networked into getting you into that uh,
Yes,
social media
yes,
marketing job, right?
correct. And so while I was trying to find a job in like focus groups, or while I'm trying to freelance into finding a magazine or any kind of news outlet, I was still bartending. I was still saving money, and I was anticipating student loans, and so by the time I was working back at AMC bartending, and it's like I was trying to network with everyone who came up to the bar. I was like, "What do you do?" I'm like, "Are you guys looking for anyone else? Like anything in like focus group stuff?" And that didn't really work. And then I was just making small talk with. He used to work at AMC and he had recently quit, or whatever the case was. We were still in contact, and I was like, he was like, "Are you still looking for a job?" And I was like, "You already know it." He's like, "Do you have any experience in social media?" I was like, "Sort of, but yes." And he was like, Can I have your resume?" I was like, "Here you go. If you need multiple copies, let me know." And that's how I got like looped in. But like, if it wasn't for him, I don't know how much longer I would have been searching, or where I would have compromised in my job search. Because again, I was really, I won't say I wasn't pigeonholing myself, but it was like I was really trying to find something in my major without even exploring something that wasn't there. Like, I still qualify for this, but I think it kind of was like along the same, like in that phase of my life, I think it was still revolving around like I wanted to graduate after 4 years from, like after high school is like, I'm going to graduate college after 4 years. I'm going to find a job within a year after that. Like, just setting goals that like I thought were expected, and then giving myself a hard time when those weren't met. Even though that's like, does that actually go for anyone? I'm not sure. But I think like that could be the no like that can be the case for the norm. Like, 4 years after college, find a job, develop your career. So like, honestly, that's not the case. It's like, it would be nice if that was the case, like, on a piece of paper, that's nice, but that's never it's never that cut and dry, in my opinion, unless you are networked in from a very early stage. Like, I even tried to do internships throughout my college career, and it's like I did find some things, but like it didn't lead into the career that I thought it was going to be. Like, and the main takeaway I remember from college is that they're like, network, network, network. And I was like, okay, I get it, but like, how is that really going to help? It literally helped with me. Like, I literally got networked into this, and I'm like, I did not see that coming. So yeah, it was. Hold on, I'm just rambling.
No, it's good because um, I think networking is a really big deal that lots of people don't really consider. It feels more comfortable to just ship out a lot of resumes to a bunch of different places on
Hmm.
like LinkedIn. It's easy. It's to a certain degree easy, right? You're like packaging something. You're like, oh, I'm doing a lot of work and I'm putting it together and throwing it in there. And then but most people don't realize that you're competing against like hundreds of people at that point, because
Yes,
every
like,
single job has tons and tons of applicants. um,
yeah, in fact, so my mom works in healthcare, right? Like, she's a risk manager. Um, there was a friend of mine from high school, and like we obviously kept in contact, and then she reached out to me saying like, "Hey, my boyfriend is trying to get into a career similar as your mom. Could he look over? Can she look over his resume?" I'm like, "Sure, absolutely." Plus, we all knew each other at that point, and then my mom was able to look over his resume, and then he asked her like, "Hey, can I actually have like a letter of recommendation because I'm applying for a job that's like adjacent to your, like my mom works at Good Sam. It's like this was like DuPage Medical Group or something. DMG, is that it? I don't know. But so he reached out and my to look over the resume. My mom was impressed, and then she was more than happy to write the letter of recommendation. And she said in her career, she's been in this career for 15 years now. She was like, I've maybe only had to write like 4 letters of recommendation. And she was like, I'm always more than happy to do it. It's just a level of like, who's going to reach out and want me to do it? I was like, oh, I never even thought about that. And my brother, who's in the military, I'm not sure if he was applying for something or there was something going on with him where he also needed a letter of recommendation, or either way, I'm bad at telling stories. But he pretty much said he went up to the person just being like, hey, I need your letter of recommendation. I have it written out. If you'd like, we can take the time to read through it, and I just need your signature at the end. And I was like, oh, that's so proactive. Because, if you do need a letter of recommendation, if you tell someone, like, I have something written up and I would love for you to look it over, and if you approve, please sign, that's going to take a lot less time for that person you're asking advice from or help from than for them to write it all out, because that could take a week or two depending on what their own schedule is like. So,
That's such a military. I remember that's literally what we're told to do. It's like, you want something, just write it yourself and then just bring it to us for signature. That is the policy. That
talk
makes
less,
sense.
smile more.
Yeah, just hand it over. Let me read it. Yeah, that's not
Mhm.
cool. Doesn't not disagreeing
But
with
it
that.
doesn't just apply to the military, right? My brother said something like that, and I was like, that is such good advice. I wish I knew that when I was applying to a bunch of places, because I have these like teachers who I got along great with. I networked with them while I was in college. It's like if I would have known that, like I could have just written something out and like whatever it might have been and have them sign it. I think that would have really added to what my resume, folder would have been. But since I've been in the same career now for a while, it's like I haven't thought about that, but it's good advice.
Yeah, to this day, if I
Hmm.
don't generally need a letter of recommendation. I think the last time I did it was for some school that I wanted to attend, and then
Hmm.
I just wrote it and I was like, "Hey, like, is this good?"
Right. In fact, what I'm remembering now is that for my study abroad program, it's like I needed 2 letters of recommendation. And it's like I asked 2 of my teachers that year, and it's like they wrote something up really, like it was super nice and sweet. But it was like, oh, I remember I stressed myself out over deadlines even before I started studying journalism. And if I would have known that advice, that could have saved me a bunch of time building up this folder, because I was working with that like limited deadline, like, and I was the only person going. It's like I knew within a week that I was going to be doing it, and then I had a week to fill everything in or like submit everything. So if you're working against the clock and you need a letter of recommendation, write it out yourself and ask for a signature.
Yeah, that's great advice.
Oh,
Um,
thanks.
and I know that we're going to run a little short on time, so I'm going to speed this up a little bit. So the next, what's a day to day like now as you're doing the social media job and freelancing?
It
Maybe
depends on
break
the
it up.
day.
Maybe break it apart. Like, what's a week like? Maybe
Yeah.
Mondays you do certain things, Tuesdays you do certain things.
Yeah, because for me personally, I pride myself on time management, and it's like no matter where you work, I feel like you're always going to have other teammates who aren't as great as time management. So I try to set that standard first and foremost, especially no matter it's a new project, a new client, whatever it is. It's like I kind of turn into a secretary where I'm like, I need deadlines, I need objectives, I need to know like what the goals are. So like when it came today, a lot of today for me is engaging. So it's like I budget at least 30 minutes per client of mine just to scroll through their social media, which in theory, like, oh yeah, I can, like, personally, you can probably do that. If you're on TikTok, you can get lost for an hour. It is a lot more time consuming when it's per client. And like also you're responding in a client's voice. So it's like for construction, there's a different response. For food, it's a different response. For dance, it's a different response. And then you do that throughout the day. And like some days are better to do that just all throughout. And there are days that I just don't have time. So Mondays are a lot of engagement. Plus, I'll research potentially like if there's new trends, if there's, anything that might be relative for a spontaneous post. Mondays are the days I plan for it. Tuesdays are calls. Like these are when I'm checking in with clients. These are when we're check. I check in with even coworkers about objectives that need to be met or need to be shared. And then also, like, Tuesdays are just a lot of meetings, like a lot of like what's going on, what can we do, and what can we work on. And then by Wednesday, no, it's kind of like rinse and repeat, where it's like Wednesday is a lot of engagement and research, Thursdays are calls again, and my whole thing is like I try to plan as much in advance as possible. So like the first week of every month, really busy for me because it's like I'm plotting out a month long, like a month of content per one of my 6 clients. Like that's all like the first week of a new month or like the last week of the previous month. It's like I'm just planning a month in advance, and this what I kind of refer to this as is making room to be spontaneous. So we have the designated posting days, which for example could be Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And so if I'm researching on Monday, potentially see something that can be posted on Tuesday or Thursday, I'm going to take that opportunity. Plus, if there's a client that reaches out last minute that's like, hey, we would like to see this on our social media, or hey, here's an idea for a campaign, I'll take that, and then I might turn a whole campaign around in 48 hours. And so that kind of plays into how much I might be engaging for one day versus researching for another. So yeah, it kind of varies here and there, but the most beautiful thing I think is that I am in full control over my time management and my schedule. So whenever I go through these like huge scrolling like marathons, it's like I need 15 minutes to reset. Like I have reading glasses on. These aren't everyday glasses, but it's like I just need to take off my glasses. I might need to do a workout, or I might need to walk my dog or something. But it's like a lot of my day is like sitting down. And like I switched from like this is my desk, this is when I start to write. I have a couch right behind me, that's for when I scroll. And sometimes when I'm being lazy, I go on my bed. Like it just depends on it kind of depends on like the level of work, but I personally set it where I don't have calls on Friday. So I can leisurely kind of do my own thing by the end of the week, because all my objectives that I've set for myself are done by Thursday, and by Friday I might just be following up. So
Hmm.
I have that, kind of gives a good breakdown.
Yeah, that's a good breakdown. Um, what do you have for if someone's interested in getting the career into this career path? Um, I know yours was sort of a roundabout way. You've always had this common thread of, art, writing, it sort of surrounds itself to social media.
Hmm.
Are there more direct ways, or do you think that gaining a diversity of experiences, sort of how you did it, is helpful when it comes to trying to get a position like yours?
Right, there's two things, right? The roundabout way is like always be open to talking with whoever you might be running into. So if you're like sitting at a bar, if you're waiting in line or something like that, just like making small talk. There's always that, but also I think you have to build up your portfolio. Like I happen to have a portfolio where it's like I could lead them right to this like, historical society page where they could see all my past work. And I think if I didn't have that, it would have been harder to prove my previous credentials on top of, going in for the interview or whatever. But I think another way to go about doing this kind of job is one, asking your friends if anyone's looking, and then two, looking for the companies you potentially want to work for online, and because they're probably going to be on social media, and sending them a message, just being like, hi, I'm really interested, I'm a big fan of your company, I would love to learn more. If you have any open positions, please let me know. I can send you a letter of recommendation. um, and I think that would be an interesting way to go about it, because if someone reached out to one of my clients being like, hi, I'm a big fan, I'd like to support or get involved more, please let me know additional information, I think that's a great initiative. Because when it comes to working with other clients, especially right now, sometimes clients don't provide all the content that's needed, especially now with like how reels and videos are like a huge priority, or it's prioritized on social media. Some clients just can't get that over to you. So if someone reaches out saying like, hi, I would like to get involved, and like I know one of the first things I would ask is like, can you make content, can you do any of this? And I think if you're able to provide that on top of a portfolio, you're building a case for yourself. So that's how I would see it, but I've never had that happen before. So,
Mhm. Yeah. And then I know that you have a pretty quick hard out soon. So what's um what is some imparting advice that you haven't talked about yet that you'd like to provide for our audience, whether it is
so
about your specific career or just life in general?
So it's going to be in general life. I told this to Kyle when we were talking. But my advice would be, which I received in college, and I love this, is that when you look at success, don't imagine it as a linear ladder. Okay. It's like when you envision it, think of it as a playground because there will be, things that connect each other that you didn't think was possible, like the monkey bars, the slide, like a little bridge, whatever it might be. That's how you should envision your career because nothing is ever that linear. Like I didn't expect to, go from sociology to finding myself in marketing. And now, truth be told, and I haven't even talked about this, is that with another client of mine who's a startup app, it's like where I am right now, I'm a project manager or a project strategist. And I could find myself eventually in the near future leading focus groups because they're on a good trajectory. And so I'm like, I think it would be a full circle if that could happen. And it's like, I think that would fulfill my jungle gym, because it's like I was what felt like a really low point, whatever symbolic playground item you want to use there. It's like when I was at my low point, it's like I didn't know where I was going to go. I didn't know what I was going to be. But you find the answers along the way. It's like, it's unfortunate that you can't read a book about your whole life right away, but you got to fill in the pages. So that's my main advice is that don't be so hard on yourself if it's not linear. Like have fun with it. Have fun on the playground. So
Yeah, no, I really like that advice because I think a lot of people, because of the school track, you feel like life should be on some sort of rails and you'd
well,
be
they
in.
pump you out like a factory anyway, right? It's like
Mhm.
you have them all online. It's feed and repeat, and it's like as soon as it's even in the military too. It's like this feed and repeat kind of situation where you're getting direction your whole entire life, and then it's all of a sudden it's like, all right, we've been prepping for you for this moment, go with the direction we've given you. It's like, well, I just memorized a lot of it. I didn't actually learn a whole lot, so now it's like playing catch up. But honestly, no time like today. I
Yeah.
don't know.
And with
Survival
that,
of the nicest.
yeah. And with that, I think we'll close. If you, for anyone watching, if you have any questions for Lauren, feel free to reach out to us at info@mentoraccess.com and we'll help relay the message. I'm sure she'll welcome any questions and be willing to respond as long as it's about your career. Don't just reach out about inappropriate things.
True. It's right. I'm here to
So,
help, but
yeah.
we're going to prioritize responses.
Yeah. So, yeah, thank you so much, Lauren, for joining us at the Life of a Career podcast. We really
Thank you
enjoyed
for
having
having
you.
me.
Hey, thanks for joining us at Mentor Access. If you like what you just watched, please click like and subscribe, and also hit that bell so that you get notified when we have new videos come out. Thank you for supporting our mission.